You are listening to Processing Trauma Out Loud, conversations about trauma and healing from two women who are doing the work.
Hey everyone, this is Kandace and Sher with Processing Trauma Out Loud. Sher, we were together just, a few weeks ago?
Yeah, I know. It's hard to believe.
I'm sitting here looking at you on the screen thinking, I miss Sher already.
I know. Yes, I know. The time together was so good.
It was a beautiful time together. And you just got back from a little vacation with your whole family. So you've just been traveling all over.
Yep, on the go.
Yeah. Well, we're happy to be back today. Sher released a single solo episode last week. If you haven't heard that, go back and listen to that because it really is setting us up for what we're going to be talking about for the next few weeks. Yeah. Sher, you and I were processing before we hit record about what does it look like when we are developing, building, coming into relationships, not just with one another, but with groups. Because when we are developing friendships or relationships older in life, there's a development phases is the way I'm seeing it. So when we met over 5 years ago, we met in a group. I'm looking at the history of 5 years and how we ended up developing the friendship, the closeness, the trust that we have in the small group that we're in together. And we just got back from a little retreat that we did at the ocean.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts, Sher, as we head into a few episodes about how do we maintain this connection and how do we continue to work through things that come up? And what's been your experience of that personally?
Yeah. I think relationships is where it all shows up, right? Like our trauma shows up in our relationships, our parts show up in our relationships, our growth shows up in our relationships, who we are, all the ways that we're designed to be, all the ways that we show up in the world. Like it, I mean, everything can feel perfect when I'm sitting alone in the morning with my journal, you know? It's like I have everything pretty figured out. And until then, I begin to bump shoulders with somebody in my world. And what does that bring up? What strengths does that bring forth? And also then sometimes what pain does that bring forth? Because particularly, I don't know. Is this true? Particularly when we've had childhood trauma, our wounds have gone so deep. And even though we've done a lot of work around our stories to bring healing, sometimes we still get triggered. Sometimes we still get dysregulated. And when that happens in the context of these relationships where we have deep connection, it's a unique opportunity for us to be able to go straight toward the pain because we have trust developed and because, frankly, we know each other's stories so well. And so I think that last week I talked about withness, and we experienced that when we were on our retreat, where we were really with each other in very intentional ways and then also very casual ways. But you put 4 women in a place for several days together. Some of us road tripped, some of us flew. I mean, there were a lot of dynamics going on. And I felt like we did such a beautiful job of working through things as they came up, of being able to voice our insecurities or the things that we were struggling with, as well as we just had so much fun and laughter and joy. So, yeah, I think that being with each other, it is the place where our stuff comes to the forefront, whatever that may look like.
Well, one of our intentions on this trip was that we would spend our mornings in group time. Mm-hmm. We would do story, or really each person got to just bring whatever they wanted to bring. And
Yep.
so we did some story, we did some ritual, we did some reading, we did some poetry, and it was just such a lovely uh, mix of what we all brought. And then we also, had free time and then had things that we had planned on doing in the evenings. But you and I both at one point felt triggered.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I think if you're good with it, we'll just talk about it for a few minutes.
Yeah.
Um, because I want to say that historically, if I'm with people that I don't know and trust at the level that I do with our group, I really would have pulled back, possibly shut down, and I would have even probably pretended
Yep.
until the trip was over.
Mm.
Like it wouldn't have gotten dealt with. And I probably would have said no the next time I got invited to go on a trip.
Yeah.
This is totally different with our people here. Right? Like we've committed to show up for each other in the good, the bad, the ugly. And
Yep.
so
Yeah.
you
I'm going to just interject something right here, if that's okay.
Mhm.
Like
Oh yeah.
these are the places where our parts, when we experience some kind of dysregulation, maybe it can be a look, it can be a sound, it can be a posture, it can be a dynamic that's happening with two other people that we're observing. It can be anything can trigger us or cause dysregulation. I mean, it just is real. And when we get triggered or dysregulated, generally it's a part that is going to come. I mean, sometimes we can stay in self and we just sail right through. Like we do that a lot in life. We stay in self, we sail right through. But when certain triggers happen and we get dysregulated, it will be a part that comes to the forefront. And we just had 3 episodes with Lori Proctor on IFS. So if you haven't heard those, please go back and listen to those, because Lori just laid such a great foundational understanding on what is IFS and how are we affected by that. But so when a part comes forward, we have a choice in that moment of how, kind of a choice. Like sometimes the part comes forward, rushes in, and then we find ourselves in a situation where how will we navigate that? And then particularly as you're talking, how will we navigate it with these people that we have learned to trust so deeply over Zoom?
Well,
Like,
this part of my, oh, go ahead.
yeah, we have this relationship where we've developed so much trust, but we're not often in person. So
Yeah.
I'm just inviting Kandace to talk about a situation that came up for her and where you got dysregulated. And then let's just kind of talk about, if share as much as you want, and then we'll just kind of process that a little bit together.
Yeah. I was going to say this part that got triggered for me is one of the most tender places in me. So
Mhm.
that the exile behind that protector part was very she was very judged, and she felt it at a very young age.
Yeah.
And so and then let's just throw in the accusation piece. Accused and judged, accused and judged. This is a very tender place in me.
Yeah.
And so I've worked with those parts, and they trust me now, but they can still get activated, right? So I'm I set an appointment on our vacation, and I did it at like 7:30 in the morning, just so I'd be done at 8:30 and not interrupt our vacation. But I had walked out after that was over, and it felt like all of a sudden people quit talking. Okay, so like you said, it can be a look, it can be a smell. It was just one of those moments. Well, I immediately went to, they didn't like it that I had an appointment on our vacation.
Yeah.
Okay. So that this was the story. And then it activates the judge, the little girl that was judged and accused.
Yeah.
And so thankfully I wasn't in that for very long, but the intensity that I felt it, if you've read my memoir, I have an FU part. So what that FU part comes up in those moments where she's feeling judged and accused is saying, I'm out. I'm out of this.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Fuck y'all, I'm out.
Yeah.
Let's just put it out there.
Fuck y'all, I'm out. Mm-hmm. But the other thing about this group is you can't hide. So I think a little bit later you kind of moved towards me and we started the conversation. I think you even asked, or maybe somebody else asked, and all of a sudden you just said, Kandace, we weren't talking about you. Yeah. And that part just took a breath. Yeah. So it wasn't even the true story, right?
Yeah.
But when our parts get activated, it's not about the true story in the moment.
Yeah.
Now, there can be a perception. And the truth is, could that have been true? Yes. And we talked through that. You guys would have had to be honest with me and say, yeah, we're a little annoyed that you made an appointment on our vacation.
Yep.
And so, but Sher, yeah. So in this group, we move towards one another.
Yep.
As opposed to, well, she can just go work that out on her own.
Right. Yeah.
Or
me or us getting activated by you thinking that we were, sometimes when we see another person's defensiveness, then we get defensive. And then there's this ping pong of defensiveness going on. But yeah, I want to just say that you came out of the room and I saw in the look on your face right away. I think I can't remember exactly. I think you asked a question or made a comment. And I just right away, I just said, Kandace, I want you to know if you're thinking that we were talking about you, we weren't.
Yeah.
And it was I could just see I could just see you exhale and just relax.
So historically, I would not have been able to stay there and have this conversation because I would have felt so much shame because of my vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really vulnerable to let you all see me in that place of fear that I was being talked about.
Yeah.
I would have armored up. And I would have had a part that came forward and say, let's not give a damn.
Yep.
And I'm like, no, I love these women. Even if there's rupture, I want to work it out. I want to stay connected to them. I don't want to pretend.
Yep. Yeah. That sense of having people who can be with you and who you have the desire to be to have us with you. If there was something going on, if there was judgment going on, you felt that even though you got activated,
right,
you were able to also be in self and to know that, okay, hey, if there's something going on here, let's bring the honest stuff to the floor and let's push through it.
Yes. So, yeah. And I want to just say that only deepened trust, right? It didn't even just deepen trust because you weren't talking about me, though you weren't. It was more deepening trust because, oh my gosh, we just, every time you work through something, the intimacy into me you see, right,
mm-hmm.
is stronger. And so, I'm so thankful. I processed that a little bit since I've been back. But you also had a situation that I think lasted a little bit longer. But it was pretty dysregulating for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Are we?
Yeah, I felt some sadness that it lasted a little bit longer.
Yeah. And I think we're going to talk about this more on the next episode.
Okay, we can do that.
I'll just give a little bit of info and say, yeah, I did get pretty dysregulated at one point, and and struggled to get out of it. And I think it's important to bring that up in this conversation, Kandace, because your disruption and us addressing it and us processing it took what, 10 minutes, 15 minutes?
Probably, yeah.
And you were back in self. Like your part did not take you out because you had the ability to come forward and be honest, and because we saw your face and we moved toward you, and it was pretty quick. Like it was big. It was a lot of energy, but it was resolved pretty quickly, and you were able to step right back into self and go on. And even though you felt it, and we have talked about it a few times how that happened, and I think the beauty, like you're saying, of, I think this is what I want to really bring out here, is the beauty of having people who know your stories. We know the stories of accusation and judgment that you have lived with. And so when we see that come up in you, we can move toward it and even know that, oh, I might have done something that triggered it, but we know that it's your story of deep trauma and wounds that are what is stirring right now, which I think is so helpful because it can help us from having to get defensive and instead be able to move toward you and say, like, okay, friend, what's stirring?
Well, that curiosity piece, you're able to be curious. And Sher, you and I both have been in groups over many decades. We also have worked with people who have shared their group experiences.
Yeah.
And I've had people say to me at times, I wished I had a group.
Mm-hmm.
I wished I had people that I could trust like that.
Yeah.
And I want to say you can.
Mm-hmm.
You can, but it does take time. It takes knowing the stories. It's not like, I'm sorry, signing up for a Bible study. There's nothing wrong with that. But the purpose of a Bible study is not necessarily to know story. I mean, you can combine those if you want, but it's more, you know, so knowing story is only the first step. And then it's the time of walking out over a period of time, having these corrective emotional experiences that are nuanced to your story.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing real magic about this. It's hard work,
Mm-hmm.
but it is so worth it.
Yeah. I think that's what we really want to say. Last week I talked about witness, and how do we get witness? Like I have spent so much of my life looking for people who are my people. I guess I'll put it that way. People who are my tribe, people who are able to hold my trauma without turning away, and people who let me see into their trauma. And I think that is why story work for us has been a place where we have found our people, because it's other women who are looking for that kind of dynamic with and looking for that kind of, they're looking for their people also.
Yes, I know we need to close out here, but when we are in these types of groups, there's a certain empowerment that comes. So in your young wounded places where you're helpless, hopeless, and voiceless, those are the things that get healed. Those parts of you get healed, the hopeless, helpless, voiceless part. And so what happens is you actually start showing up differently in your life. And those who maybe were crossing your boundaries or taking advantage of you or whatever, or if you struggled with crossing people's boundaries, this isn't us versus them. This is about healing.
Yeah.
But when you start showing up different, sometimes, and the other person doesn't like it because it makes them uncomfortable or they're disrupted, sometimes the group gets blamed. Mm-hmm. And of course, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The group gets blamed for the disruption. but really what's happening is is the uncomfortableness of truth.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the bottom line is that when we are stuck in our places of trauma and our places of pain, we don't really know ourselves. We're not able to identify what are my desires? What is it that really matters to me? Why do I accept being treated in certain ways that are hurtful? Or, you know, all of these dynamics that show up in our relationships, like when we are stuck in our pain, when our parts are kind of more or less running the show, we're not being our true self. It's just impossible. For sure, we get glimpses of it. I'm not saying that, but to actually be the person that we want to be, to show up, as I like to say, courageous, free, and fully alive. Like we were all created to be courageous, free, and fully alive. But when we're stuck in our places of trauma, we can't. But the reality is that sometimes being stuck in our places of trauma works for some of the people who we're closest to. Yep. And when we begin to get healed and show up in different kinds of ways, it disrupts the system of the dynamic that has worked sometimes for, even decades. So this is where, sometimes the places of goodness can be, have the finger pointed at them as being bad. But, you and I both know the freedom, the life, the love, the goodness that we are experiencing. But as you said, Kandace, like it's hard work and it takes commitment. And, we have talked about how with the pearls, for the first couple of years, I mean, we met twice a week for 2 hours each time. That's how serious we were about this work. And now for the last few, so now we still meet 2 hours every single week. I mean, every single week. And plus that, we have our times when we connect with each other, even outside of groups. So, I mean, it's a lot, but we place high value on this because we recognize that this is the place where we're seen and known and invited to become more and more alive and more free to desire the things that we desire in life. And yeah, the goodness of having this kind of connection, I think it's just the longing of every human soul. I really do.
I do too, friend. And we also have a lot of fun together. We also have conversations that have nothing to do with our trauma. So we're on a podcast now talking, processing our trauma out loud, but we have lots of life outside of this conversation that we share with one another. So next week, we're going to come back and kind of go deeper into the story of what happened with you on our group trip.
Yep. Sounds good, Kandace. Yep.
Good to be with you, friend. Love you.
Yep. Love you too.